The Paris Catacombs, Mysterious Voices. Beneath the bustling streets of Paris lies a hidden world, a dark labyrinth stretching over 200 miles. The Paris Catacombs, once a simple quarry, became the final resting place for more than 6 million souls. In the late 18th century, the cemeteries of Paris were overflowing, their decaying bodies seeping into the city's water supply. Authorities had no choice but to relocate the dead. Under the cover of night, workers transported the remains by the cartload, stacking skulls and bones in eerie, decorative formations deep underground. What was meant to be a solution to a crisis soon became something far more sinister. By the 19th century, rumors swirled that not all who entered the catacombs left them. Strange disappearances were reported, some accidental, others never explained. Among the lost was Philbert Aspert, a doorkeeper of the Val de Grace hospital. In 1793, he ventured into the catacombs with only a single candle to guide him. He never returned. His body was discovered 11 years later, lying near an exit he had desperately tried to reach. His hand was outstretched, his fingers barely grazing the stone wall. To this day, visitors claim to hear footsteps echoing in the dark tunnels. Some say they have even seen a shadowy figure lurking near the spot where his body was found. Yet, Philbert Aspart was not the only one to meet an unsettling fate. In 2010, police discovered a fully equipped movie theater hidden within the catacombs. The underground space had a large screen, seating, and a bar stocked with bottles of vintage wine. The power lines had been expertly installed, tapping into the city's electricity grid. Mysteriously, upon returning a few days later, officers found the entire setup gone. The chairs, the screen, even the power lines had been cut, leaving behind only a single cryptic message scrawled on the wall. Ne cherchez pas, do not seek. The deeper one ventures into the catacombs, the more the air shifts. Time seems to slow. The walls press in closer. And then there are the voices. Many explorers report hearing whispers just beyond their range of hearing. Some claim to recognize their own names being called from the darkness, as if the bones themselves were speaking. The most chilling accounts come from those who have wandered too far. One group of urban explorers, filming their descent in the early 1990s, captured something terrifying. As they ventured into an unmarked passage, the whispers turned to screams, not just one voice, but many, all crying out in agony. The camera shook violently as the man recording dropped it and ran. The tape was later recovered, but the explorer was never seen again. In 2004, police conducting a routine patrol stumbled upon an unmapped chamber. Within it, they found an array of recording devices, playing looping voices that seemed to whisper incoherent phrases. More disturbing was the realization that someone, or something, had been listening to them first. Near the entrance, police discovered a collection of cameras, all pointing outward, as if monitoring those who entered. Who or what had been watching remains unknown. One of the most feared sections of the catacombs is the Gates of Hell, an unmarked passage where the air is said to grow thick, almost unbreathable. Those who step beyond it often report losing their sense of direction, even if they were following a mapped route. Their flashlights flicker. A suffocating silence follows, until they hear it. A low, guttural growl. Some describe it as inhuman, something ancient lurking beyond the reach of light. Those who have ignored the warnings never make it back. Perhaps the most infamous case occurred in 2017, when two teenagers disappeared after venturing into the catacombs at night. Search teams scoured the tunnels for days before finally locating them. The boys were found barely alive, huddled in a small alcove. Their clothes were torn, their bodies covered in scratches, yet the most disturbing detail was the look in their eyes. They refused to speak about what they had seen. To this day, neither has given an account of what forced them into silence. The Paris catacombs are more than a burial ground. They are a place where the past never rests, where whispers beckon from the darkness, and where those who listen too closely may never find their way out. For those who dare to descend, one warning remains constant. Stay on the path, and if you hear voices, do not answer. The Lizzie Borden House. Haunting. The house at 230 2nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, stands as a silent observer to one of America's most infamous crimes. A simple, boxy, colonial-style home, its exterior is unassuming, almost welcoming. But those who cross its threshold often leave with a deep, unsettling feeling. The air inside feels heavier, almost as if it clings to the skin, and the silence is never truly silent. The Lizzie Borden house is more than a relic of the past. It is a prison of echoes where history refuses to be forgotten. On August 4th, 1892, the Borden family home became the scene of one of America's most gruesome and mysterious murders. The home's patriarch, Andrew Borden, was a wealthy but notoriously stingy and unlikable man, known for locking doors inside his own house and keeping his money hidden away. That morning, his wife, Abby Borden, had been cleaning the guest bedroom when an attacker struck her from behind. She was hit 19 times with an axe, her skull split open like cracked porcelain. Hours later, Andrew returned home and settled onto the couch for a nap, unaware that the killer was still inside. His murderer struck 10 times, caving in his face and eye socket so violently that his nose was cleaved in half. When the police arrived, they found no signs of forced entry, and despite the horrific violence, there was no trail of blood leading anywhere. Suspicion immediately fell on Lizzie Borden, Andrew's 32-year-old daughter, who had a rocky relationship with both her father and stepmother. Lizzie was home during the murders but claimed to hear nothing. However, she had been seen attempting to purchase poison days before and later burned a dress, claiming it was ruined by paint. The evidence was purely circumstantial, and after a sensationalized trial, Lizzie was acquitted. To this day, the case remains officially unsolved, but many believe the Borden family never truly left their home. Today, the house has been converted into a bed and breakfast, offering daring visitors the chance to spend the night where the Bordens died. Those who have stayed in Lizzie's former bedroom have reported unseen hands brushing against them in the night or waking up to the feeling of being watched from the corner of the room. But the most active location is the guest bedroom, where Abby Borden was murdered. Guests have seen the apparition of a heavy-set woman in old-fashioned clothes, standing motionless by the bed, staring at them with hollow eyes. Some have even felt a sudden icy pressure on their backs, as if they are being pushed down by an unseen force in the exact spot where Abby's lifeless body was found. Others have reported a choking sensation, as if someone were gasping their final, desperate breaths. The sitting room, where Andrew Borden met his violent fate, carries an eerie stillness. Some guests have seen indentations appear on the couch, as though someone is still sitting there, and a few have even witnessed the shadow of a man in a suit standing near the fireplace before vanishing into the walls. But the most chilling phenomenon is the sound. On still, quiet nights, visitors and staff have heard a soft, wet thudding noise, a rhythmic chop, chop, chop echoing from the walls. Paranormal investigators claim their equipment goes haywire in this room, and many have captured distorted voices on audio recordings, one chillingly whispering, "I didn't do it." A former owner of the inn, who lived in the house for several years, recalled hearing whispers in empty rooms and the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth in the upstairs hallway when no one else was there. One night, while alone in the house, she was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of a woman's anguished scream, followed by a guttural sob, as if someone were reliving their final moments over and over. Even those who visit for the day tours often leave shaken, feeling as though invisible eyes are watching them. Some tourists have left with unexplained scratches on their arms, while others have reported their phones and cameras malfunctioning inside the house, only for them to work perfectly fine once they step outside. One tour guide recalled leading a group through the home when suddenly the entire group gasped at once. Every single person had seen a dark figure dart across the hallway behind them. The house at 232nd Street is a place frozen in time, where the past refuses to fade. The murders remain a mystery, but the energy of that violent morning still lingers in every corner, every shadow. The walls remember, the floors remember, and perhaps the dead remember too. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium, haunting. Sitting atop a lonely hill in Louisville, Kentucky, Waverly Hills Sanatorium stands as a decaying monument to the thousands who perished within its walls. Constructed in 1910 to combat the raging tuberculosis epidemic, the hospital was meant to be a place of healing. Instead, it became a prison of suffering. At its peak, tuberculosis had no cure. Patients were subjected to experimental treatments, some horrifying in their brutality. Doctors removed ribs to allow diseased lungs to expand, forced patients into electroshock therapy, and even exposed them to extreme cold and heat. The mortality rate soared. It is estimated that over 63,000 people died here, their final moments consumed by pain, fear, and helplessness. Even after Waverly Hills closed in 1961, the hospital never truly fell silent. Visitors, investigators, and skeptics alike have come face to face with the unexplainable. Shadowy figures lurking in the hallways, disembodied voices whispering from the darkness, and an overwhelming sense that the sanatorium's dead refuse to leave. On the 5th floor, where the most hopeless tuberculosis cases were housed, sits Room 502, a place steeped in tragedy. In 1928, a nurse was found hanging from a light fixture in this very room. She had been unmarried and reportedly pregnant, a scandalous fate in that era. Overcome with despair, she is said to have ended her own life. However, rumors persist that she didn't jump willingly. Some claim she had been having an affair with a doctor, and when he abandoned her, she was forced into silence. Others whisper that she had learned something terrible, something about the treatments being performed at Waverly Hills, and was silenced before she could speak out. Years later, another nurse met a horrifying fate in the very same room. Staff found her body on the ground outside after she had apparently fallen or been pushed from the window. To this day, visitors stepping into Room 502 describe an overpowering dread, sudden nausea, and an unbearable pressure on their chests, as if something unseen is squeezing the life out of them. As the death toll mounted, Waverly's administrators faced a grim dilemma: how to remove the dead without the living losing hope. Their solution was the body chute, a 500-foot underground tunnel leading from the hospital to the bottom of the hill. Patients never saw the bodies being removed. Instead, the dead were quietly taken through the passage, their final journey hidden from sight. Today, the tunnel is one of the most feared locations in Waverly Hills. Those who dare to enter describe the unshakable feeling of being watched. Some hear footsteps behind them, growing closer, but when they turn, no one is there. Others hear voices whispering their names in the darkness. One investigator filmed his walk through the tunnel, believing he was alone. Later, when he reviewed the footage, he saw a dark, crawling figure clinging to the walls, slowly moving toward him. The figure had no face. Not all ghosts at Waverly Hills are menacing, at least not at first glance. Many visitors report encounters with Timmy, the spirit of a young boy who still lingers in the hospital halls. Guests who roll a ball across the floor often watch in shock as it rolls back on its own. Some claim to hear soft giggles, while others catch glimpses of a small shadow darting across the hallway. But some investigators aren't convinced that Timmy is a child. They believe something far darker is pretending to be innocent, luring people in, only to reveal its true nature. Several guests have described a disturbing shift in energy when interacting with Timmy, as if something is watching them from just beyond the light, waiting for them to let their guard down. Throughout Waverly Hills, shadow figures move in the corners of the eye. Some appear as fleeting shapes, but others take human form, only taller, twisted, their limbs unnaturally elongated. One man, walking alone down a hallway, described feeling a sudden pressure in his chest, as if someone had just leaned in close to whisper in his ear. He turned, expecting to see another visitor. Instead, he saw a towering black figure standing in the doorway. It did not move, yet the feeling of suffocation grew stronger. Terrified, he turned and ran. Even experienced investigators have fled Waverly Hills in sheer panic, convinced they were not alone in those abandoned corridors. The sanatorium was meant to be a place of healing, but Waverly Hills never truly let go of its dead. The spirits that remain are restless, lingering in the rooms where they took their last breaths, walking the halls where they suffered, watching those who dare to enter. Doors slam shut when no one is near. Shadows shift, creeping along the walls. And through it all, the air remains heavy, thick with the weight of thousands of souls who never left. Waverly Hills was never abandoned. It is simply waiting.
Thanks for watching. Come back soon for more dreaded whispers. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.